want to do without the slides?
Without slides.
Without the slides, okay. You have to the slides, so you have to press, all of you have to press the down arrow very, very hard.
Okay. Okay, no worries.
I think it's easier to do it. Well, thank you very much for being almost on time. It's really appreciated. We have an amazing power on AI from an academic point of view. Honestly, like when I was looking at the CVs of everybody presenting now, I was quite humbled. It's like, what am I doing here and what am I speaking? Like, it's just not the type of thing that you want to be sitting, the type of people that you'll be sitting with. At least we are going to learn a lot. You have the bios in the program, so I'm going to do very, very brief introductions. We're going to run it as a panel, so I'm going to do a short question, so for an initial intervention with all of them, probably with one follow-up question, and then we're going to try to find a dialogue between them. These are mainly academics working with AI, working on AI, and hopefully everybody finds it extremely entertaining. I'm looking forward to it. So first we have Professor Ying Yang. She is the co-director of the Data Horizon Research Center and Deputy Director of Applied Artificial Intelligence Research Center. And if I have to highlight one thing that impressed me the most about the bio, and I know it's metrics, she's one of the top 2% scientists globally for her long career impact by the Stanford Elsevier measurements. So the first question I'm going to ask from everybody is, can you tell us how you apply AI in your research?
Thank you. I always last minute change, and the last minute change is I decided to abandon my slides I prepared. So I just give a brief introduction of the center, the Applied AI Center, which is quite unique. The Applied Research Center at Macquarie University is a consilient research center which cross all the discipline, the 4 faculties. So, and it's applied. So what we have been focusing on is data-driven discovery in science, engineering, humanity, biomedicine, humanity, and so on and so forth. So just to be brief, what we have been focused on is the certain area. In one particular area I'd like to mention is the anomaly detection. It's fascinating because anomaly can be everywhere, which is significant. For instance, anomaly in insurance, in our health, in brain, and also in social media, like rumors, like misinformation. At that time, we thought anomaly is something rare, right? It's out of distribution, it's outliers, but probably not the case for misinformation nowadays, with the advance of AI techniques. Amazingly, anomaly can be good as well, because in the biomedicine area, we're looking for some rare pattern, which is good for downstream drug development. So that's the anomaly detection. Is the applied area and apply for wide areas. Now the technology we focus on is using graph learning, because graph is amazing modeling tools. Everything can be modeled as a data as long as graph, as long as we can find the relationship. The relationship can be physical, can be virtual. Any interaction. Even you look at it, you follow someone, it can be it can be modeled as a relation. So we also sharpen our modeling techniques. And there are some applied area, particularly we have been focusing on, is the dementia and also brain we want to understand the hearing loss, how we can detect, and we want to see how the brain developed, in the dementia the journey. So because of that, we use a lot data, real data. So the data, we know there's a lot of bias, right? There's a noisy data. Data can be noisy, and the labeling can be noisy. So this is the sort of all the challenges we have been facing. Challenging, but lots of opportunities. Thank you.
That sounds really interesting. And probably I will get back to you about noise in a little bit. But let's move to Ramona Villarasa, Professor Villarasa from UTS. She is the creator of the Gender Legislative Index, which is a tool to measure, to assess the compliance with gender equality of legislation across the world. And that tool that she's probably going to talk about uses machine learning and decision trees. So, Ramona, tell us, how do you apply AI in your research?
Excellent, thank you very much, and thank you for having me on today's panel. As Jose Miguel mentioned, I am a lawyer by training. I'm an international women's rights lawyer, and I've lived and worked in many parts of the world. And I think it's that practice that made me feel quite incentivized to think about more innovative ways of trying to close gender equality gaps. I've also published a few books, and one of those books on the screen, The Woman President, is the output of the initial stages of the Gender Legislative Index that I'm going to tell you about. So I joined UTS in 2017, and I had a project which was looking at the difference women leaders, so as in presidents and prime ministers, make on the people that they're leading, the women that they're leading, through legislation enacted during their tenures. I wanted to know, was that legislation gender responsive? So are women leaders good for fellow women? And I discovered there was no real methodology to do that and no real practice. So there was a gap that I could fill, and the answer was the Gender Legislative Index, which I developed in partnership with a team of pro bono engineers at UTS called Rapido Social. So you can imagine I'm a lawyer with a lot of pieces of legislation enacted, in that case, in the Philippines, Sri Lanka and Indonesia, and a lot of Excel documents, and no way to actually process all of that data, bring in teams of evaluators, make it public, and tell a headline story. Which law is good or which law is bad? Or which president is the best, has been the best during their tenure for women, or not particularly so. And the Gender Legislative Index allows me to do that. It's embedded in international women's rights law and uses criteria from international women's rights law. And so far we've evaluated legislation from very diverse domains, reproductive rights and gender-based violence, to workplace equality and tax. I don't want to talk more about the international women's rights method. I'm very happy to chat about that at any stage. It is my bread and butter and what I love. What I want to talk about is what the collaboration with engineers and data scientists has meant for the index. So there's two different scales that we use to evaluate legislation, and you can see some of it on the screen here. One of the pictures on the right is not quite the early prototype, but it's a pretty rough mock-up of the Gender Legislative Index. And on the other side, you can see the Gender Legislative Index as it looks today. So legislation is evaluated against two different scales. So there's a scale to measure different provisions of laws from gender regressive to gender responsive and to give overall scores for legislation. We use a lot of engineering techniques in UX, so there's heat maps to show levels of agreement and disagreement. But the one question I'm asked the most is which country has the best laws? In this data set, I would say by far the Philippines, and I think it is actually one of the world leaders that's overlooked a lot for its gender equal laws, at least on paper. And what the machine learning algorithm has allowed us to do is to take however many evaluators we have working on a law and give an overarching score for the law. It uses a decision tree algorithm. So very simple, not simple for me as an international women's rights lawyer, but very simple in data science terms. X number of gender aggressives, X number of responsives flow to a final classification. And we have a headline story. The data set is trained on a subset of data, not knowing which law or which country or which president, which I believe has reduced some of the human bias we would otherwise bring to evaluating legislation. And due to the interest of what this might look like in Australia, I then added Australia and laws enacted under our one and only female Prime Minister to be able to tell a story about a tendency to enact gender-blind laws as opposed to gender-responsive ones. So if you take a step back, we went live with the index in 2020, and ChatGPT launched in November 2022. So I had this window before everybody was talking about AI as everyday language, when slowly policymakers and the public were coming attuned to AI for social justice. And I think that's why the index was able to have the impact it did. The Gender Legislative Index was picked up by a Tasmanian independent MP named Ruth Forrest. She passed a motion in Tasmanian Parliament. It's a very tricky clicker. She passed a motion in Tasmanian Parliament to establish a Gender and Equality Audit Committee based on the index and my methodology. And so now that's the only committee that exists in any parliament at a state, territory or federal level in Australia exclusively focused on gender auditing. So the index has come off the page and had impact in parliament. And I think part of it was because of the attractiveness of AI. It also makes their index accessible, but also gives people this sense of a less biased way of evaluating. I've been to Tasmania to help the committee audit their first bill, which has now led to a current Australian Research Council Discovery Grant, where we're actually studying parliamentary committees that audit legislation from a gender perspective in Tasmania, the ACT, and comparing Canada and also Spain. And I think what excites me about this project is to be able to bring some of the best practices from Spain to the English language literature, because there's a real tendency for Anglophone scholars and legislators to overlook what's happening in Spanish-speaking jurisdictions. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to know more about that, how that expansion to Spain is happening and what you're going to be looking into. But for the time being, we are going to move to Dr. Magdalena Rodríguez de Paz. She is a lecturer at the Spanish and Latin America Studies at the University of Sydney and a lecturer in International Studies at UTS. And she's researching cultural and linguistic issues, but she describes herself as a cultural theorist who analyzes how the evolution of the Spanish national identity in the popular cultural context has shaped contemporary Spain. I would love to know how you're using AI in your research, Magdalena.
Thank you so much. Hopefully, I am trying. Yes, thank you so much, and then I will try to do my best. Okay, thank you so much everyone for being here today, and today I will present how AI encourages motivation for students and consequently student success. And I will go first with a little reflection, later talk about AI as a friend, as a foe, and talking about transforming challenges into opportunities. I am also. And first, just to reflect, I would like to ask you everyone, how did you learn your first foreign word? Try to think. In a classroom, traveling, in a book, or maybe in any app that you see? Well, today, many people are learning language and culture by chatting with AI, okay? And then AI is reshaping how we learn and teach language. But is that a good thing, Macarena? Let's go to explore both sides of the argument. And first, let's go to AI as a friend in language education. How do I use AI in my classes? I use it in different ways, designing content, creativity, innovation, personalizing learning, and also instant correction and feedback, automatic grading. And of course, simulate or conversation appearing there, and automatic translation. Then later we'll go back to that in relation with AFO. The most important thing about AI in classroom and in education, I am focused about language learning, is the accessibility 24/7. Okay, I have my assistant every time. I don't need to answer too many emails from my student because I have flexibility and constant access to learning from my student. Of course, I need to engage them with the AI, and I need to speak like it's a help for me and help for the student. Help for multiple intelligence that I have in the class. engagement, and adaptability to the different needs and progress of my students. Of course, today I will not give you all the activities that I do, but just a couple. For example, I use my first degrees are historian, and then of course I use my grand artist Dali, and this is not an image of AI, this is a real one. It was a photograph in 1971 done for Marc Locro, and we have the representation of Dali as king of Spain. And in Spanish, in my case, I teach Spanish language and culture. In beginner's level, that will be level 1 and level 2, we are talking about the daily routine. We try to imagine the daily routine of this artist. And later, we pass to interviews, okay? Interviews about him. This question I put in Spanish, ¿era o estaba loco? Of course, in English, the meaning of ser and está is only one word, to be. But it's a little bit tricky for Anglo speaker, and not only Anglo speaker, a lot of students between the different that one word and the other one. And then we do an interview, we listen an interview and watch an interview and have a look about that. Always I use real material in my classes, and of course, La Casa de Papel has to be there. And we always know the mask that they use, okay, we can relate with Dali, and there is a lot of controversy with, because they didn't ask for permission to the family to use that mask and that image, okay? And then we change, of course, if we are talking about Dali, I put the persisting of memory, okay? La persistencia de la memoria, and we change that hardware, and we put with artificial intelligence, we will start to imagine what is the meaning of the things, and also we start to move all the words that appear there. But what about if we are using AI to chat already on Dali, okay, and ask him, are you sure you did this one in your daily routine? Was real the things that you are painting? Okay, or what is the meaning? It's like the students, they are using a motivation activity that we are passing an image and a real life to AI. And a lot of the students later say to me after the years, oh Macarena, do you remember that activity? I still remember, I was chatting with Dali and through history. And later, I use in my class, I have a student from different background, and of the background we use in an adventure to convert all of them in artists. Everyone wants to be an artist, everyone will be an influencer and singer through, for example, AI, through 11 Lab, and they can do a movie, they can do a song. The everyday life situation that we use in the class, we pass to creativity through AI. But AI as a whole, be careful with the translation. I put in here a couple of translations. I know I am running out of time. And then, me regala un tinto, por favor. Can you have a red wine, please? Yes, but depending on the context, that tinto in Colombia is someone coffee, okay? So I therefore, and regalar is to give you something like a gift, and I don't give you. Pues yo voy añadiendo normally the translation, well, I am going to get going. Sincerely, how long after that? 1 hour or 2 hours? And ahora te llamo, I will call you. Are you sure? When? And then your students,
seguiré esperando a que me llame.
the students, they post their voice to an image. They will continue waiting for the call because that call never coming. And then we transforming all the challenges and for the artificial intelligence more with instant translation to the challenges to change to opportunities. As a educator, we need to try to be there and to have the interaction with the student, artificial intelligence, and of course peer review. Because I need to finish now, that is a little bit of the challenges that we have, but a little by little all these challenges we are putting with the guidelines, with assessment, and everything very clear for the student to know and how to know to use the artificial intelligence in the class. Thank you.
Thank you, Macarena. Sorry, I have to press you with the time. I want to definitely know more about the accessibility to learning. I will probably ask you and Professor Yang about that a bit later. But now let's move to Oscar Perez Concha, who is a health and data scientist and working on healthcare processes and contributing to better patient outcomes. And he is currently working, if I'm not mistaken, about extracting meaningful information from large and unstructured data sets. When we last time we talked, it was about what the feeling that the nurses and the doctors have to do when they a patient is given the go home clearance. But tell us, how are you applying AI in your research these days?
Thank you very much, Jose Miguel. May I start just to...
Whatever you want.
I'm not used to presenting sitting down. So thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here as speaker, so thank you very much for inviting me. I work at UNSW at the Center for Big Data Research in Health, and some of my colleagues are here today, so thank you everyone. And this is a very tricky one. Can you have this slide? And by the way, I put here because I work in the area of AI in health. I'm a researcher, but also I'm an educator, I'm a lecturer, so I'm very proud of teaching AI to the next generation. And also I'm a very proud member of the Spanish researchers in Australia Pacific. And so what do we do, or how do we apply AI in our research? This is the original question that Miguel asked. So in a nutshell, we teach language models to speak the language of health and healthcare. But language models nowadays, what I mean is large language models, so very similar to what you have when you interact with ChatGPT. So a similar model that is behind the scenes, what we do usually is to have an open source model, and we download it to our servers. And these models nowadays they come pre-trained from big companies usually, like Meta or other big companies. So just to establish a parallelism, it's like these models know how to speak, how to talk. So if you enter a question, usually they answer. But they are like it's like us. We know how to speak, but here I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong. Now that it's a doctor, so we cannot give medical advice, or we don't know anything about diagnosis. So what we do is to teach these models, or adapt these models to the context of health to answer health questions. And that's not an easy task because, as you can imagine, if you, for example, you ask ChatGPT or Copilot, what's my name, or what I'm doing here, what is life. If ChatGPT, for example, or any large language model gives you an answer that is wrong, well, that's it. You are there to curate the answer. But imagine that translated to a medical setting or to patients. So we have to be very careful. We are talking about life and death usually. So the three things that we try to do with our models is firstly to accurately create these models or adapt these models so they reflect factual evidence-based knowledge. In a safe way, this is point number 2, so patient safety is paramount, so the language models don't have to cause harm. And then transparently, because usually these large language models have black boxes and we don't know exactly what is behind or why they make or the decisions that they make. So it's very important. So just to give you 3 examples. Of some of the projects that we do. The first one, I just put this image of a doctor or a clinician just recording data in hospital. So usually we work with hospital data. And I don't know where, because before working in this area, I didn't know that there was so much data behind the scenes. So whenever you go to hospital, there is a huge team of people that they are recording data. So every interaction that you have, not only from the doctor, but nurses, physiotherapists, pharmacists, everyone is recording something there in free text. So they are recording this patient has these symptoms, blah, 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 blah. So you can imagine after a patient is discharged, not only people from the emergency department, but throughout all the episode of care have been writing notes about your stay in the hospital. And that's a lot of work for a human later on to read, and that's what happens normal. Okay, so one of the applications that we do, for example, one of the projects, and it's the one that you can see here on the top left corner, it's very close to my heart. It was an application that is in collaboration with the Center of Excellence in Intellectual Disability. It's just that this center thought that it would be very important to have a flag that says if a person has an intellectual disability or not. And this is very close to my heart because my brother has an intellectual disability, and whenever he goes to the doctor or whenever he interacts with a nurse, they tend to talk to him as if it was me or anyone that could understand everything perfectly. And sometimes, not even myself, I understand what the doctor is telling me, let alone if you have an intellectual disability. I'm sorry for that. So then what we are trying to do is just reading all these notes, just to come up with a classifier that is trying to understand if that person has an intellectual disability or not. So then there is a flag that says this person has an intellectual disability, because currently, otherwise a person, usually an administrative person from the hospital, has to read everything just to put this flag. And I'm going to stop here. I think we can go through the other two projects later if you want, and we can discuss more. So thank you very much.
Sounds exciting. I really want to hear more about the other examples. I like how you explained that teaching language models how to speak health. I love the expression. We move now to Dr. John Boswell, who is a senior lecturer in the School of Media and Communications. And looking at his profile, I was impressed with the amount of different things that you're doing. Activism, social media, digital media, social movements, social cultural change. But I think that your use of AI is really distinct from the other panelists. So tell us about it.
Thanks very much for the intro. My most recent work, which came out as a book last year, was a study of the so-called anti-woke movement, the online culture wars. You may be familiar with characters like Jordan Peterson or Joe Rogan in the US, but it's quite a global phenomenon. So that came out as a book last year, focusing on the Anglosphere, the Anglophone countries, but I'm now writing a sort of sequel on the online culture wars, which are not only online, they're also offline, in other parts of the world, particularly looking at the moment at Southeast Asia, East Africa, and Latin America. Mostly secondary research at the moment, with some primary as well. So my background is in the anthropology of media, especially in recent years, digital media, and my preliminary work on AI has been inspired by an anthropologist called Ilana Gershon, who wrote a couple of years ago this really interesting paper on AI, especially generative AI, as a genre machine, as a machine that's very good at producing standardized genres, and that therefore is a threat to what David Graeber, the anthropologist, called bullshit jobs. It's a technology that's very good at producing bullshit. And among other things, I'm not saying that's the only thing it does. But the reason that paper initiated my more recent strand of research is that it connects very closely to some of these figures that I've been following, Jordan Peterson, Joe Rogan, etc., who specialize, not all their content, but some of the content can be classified as bullshit in the sense theorized by Frankfurt, the idea of content that is not really that interested in the truth. It has no empirical or little empirical backing, but it can make a persuasive case. So I'm looking at the moment at this idea of, for example, public figures who have come back from the dead. Recently, Christopher Hitchens, the famous atheist scholar, journalist rather than scholar, he's been resuscitated through AI, and people are asking and wondering, there are YouTube channels and discussions online about what would Christopher Hitchens make of the most recent, trans debate, or what would Christopher Hitchens make of what's happening in Gaza. Any of these polarizing issues that are now being discussed with figures that either entirely mediated through AI or created through AI, or sometimes enhance. You know, you may remember the Argentinian president, Milei, who a couple of years ago gave a talk at the World Economic Forum, and that was automatically dubbed into English with an Argentine accent and his own voice, and it came across as if it was Milei himself who was giving that speech in English. So that's another aspect that I'm looking at. I'm interested in what ways AI is changing or not the way these public performer personas are produced within a culture war context. And it has everything to do with genre. It's about the connection between genre and persona. If you want to be a satirist, you need to write satire, and AI can help you with satire, and so on. Now, my own usage of AI, I've dabbled in it, but it goes back to, for many years now, I've been sticking to the old pen and paper. I do a lot of pen and paper. I do use digital technologies, but most of my research, all my research is qualitative, ethnographic, and I still continue to stick to the earlier methods. I'm happy to discuss why I appear to be resisting AI at the moment.
That sounds a very promising conversation to have. Well, thanks so much for the five of you. My first question probably goes to Professor Yang and Macarena, and it's about the learning, like the learning of AI, learning with AI, learning for AI, and I would frame it in two different ways. The first one, Professor Yang, because I think you have been working on this, is how we should reform our education system so our graduates are competent in the era of AI. And for Macarena, probably the other side of it. How do we ensure that in the process of learning, how do we use AI in a meaningful way for students so that it also facilitates the accessibility of those students? So we'll get the microphone back here, if you don't mind. Yep.
Thank you. What a question, which I don't have an answer, but I'm really fascinated by this. Definitely, AI the influence impact in transformative way. We have to use it, and in the era of AI, how our education system need to be transformed or adapted in whatever way you call it. I can give you some examples. If you look at the job, our student is our product. We want them to be competitive and sustainable in this context world. Now, if we look at the job market, AI really affects the entry-level job, the junior-level job. You see that a lot of company don't open a graduate program anymore. Maybe just frozen for the time being, but we don't know. And we don't see many junior position open. I think at the senior level, it hasn't been sort of impact that much, but the junior level. So that affects our graduate directly. That's for one thing. Now, on the other hand, if we use AI, for instance, like ChatGPT, and we use the AI for diagnosis, for image processing, I can feel that my writing skill sort of decreased because I use it a lot to polish my emails, for instance. And if you use Copilot, they can reply for you. And also some doctors sort of saying that if they rely on the AI to diagnose, that also reduce their sort of ability. Now, for the later, I saw some research saying that they use AI as the second examiner to work with the doctor, and I think they can produce better result. But anyway, that's the claim. I'm not sure. Now, come back to our students. I feel that knowledge, learning knowledge, grab knowledge is not the main focus anymore. But the skill, the ability, we always say that we teach students how to learn, right? But I think now the students really have to be competent in probably working with AI or using AI to increase their creativity or critical thinking and all that, and to be able to answer questions, better questions. Now, I think that to have the ability to answer questions is really critical, and also can be creative when it comes to working with AI. Before I came here, I asked, because ChatGPT normally for me is for me to ask questions. And now I push ChatGPT to ask questions. I'm amused by a bias nowadays. I want to see different bias, because some bias is necessary, and it's not all bad. So first I ask ChatGPT to give me a framework on bias and managing bias. That's great. It give me sort of bad, definitely bad. We have to avoid it. And then there's some necessary ones. And then I said, can you ask me, how I can tell or differentiate what bias are necessary and what bias are inevitable. Those are outliers, I would say. And so ask me questions, because and then he start to ask me some amazing questions. So but overall, I don't have answer for that, but I think we need to start to have a lot of thinking in it.
I love the idea of reversing the role of ChatGPT from giving you answers to asking you questions.
Yeah, so there's a saying use AI for using AI, because it can tell you actually how to use itself. Push it to ask you a question. Yes, you can try it. It's fascinating, I would say.
Thank you so much, Professor Yang. In my case, I still see AI as a friend, even if that is a foe also in education, but also as a friend. And talking about the student, always I say for the student are very several impactful in different ways, because for me I use for the student first, we are thinking sometimes that a student now they know all how to use AI, and it's not true, it's depends. And then we need to help them how you need to use it, what kind of prompt, how ChatGPT is good, but maybe it will be better this other application for this task, and another one for that one. Then we need, as educators, give the tools to the student and provide the ways to use the AI. For example, for my student, I always use AI for personalized learning, and also adaptive learning. Why? Because we have students that are with multilingual skills, and they need to use also in the education. And of course, every student has a different needs and different progress. Not all students in our class, they progress in the same way. And then AI let me how can I say, give me the tools to actually focus in each student and to see the progress of that. Okay, and also the everyone. And I can put my hand up already. When you need to write a paper and you have the writer block, I don't know what to write. My document is white, I don't know. And then that is another. Overcome the writer's block that sometimes we have. The students they have also. And then why don't you use it as an example, as an idea? It's like when we go to a restaurant and we have a menu and you need to choose, what do you feel like today? There are a lot of options, and then you choose whatever is for, in this case, for reserve or support your point in education. And accessibility and inclusion are very, very important for me in relation with the assistive technologies, speech-to-text, real-time translation, and screen readers, because not everyone has the same needs in our classes, and some of them we have disabilities that thanks to AI we can achieve to break that disabilities and the language barrier. And the best practice that always I say to my students, check always the course policy of the university, in my case High University, I teach in Sydney Uni and UTS, and also the Nebrija University in Madrid. And always check first the policies, because the policies depend on the institution, depend even the teacher, or depend on the course. And use AI not to finalize your draft, but just as a supplement, just as a helper to engage with your learning. Okay? Just know the answer. We need to use the critical thinking when we are reading something that is coming for AI. And always transparency. All my students are allowed to use AI, and they have to put in the reference. That is very important. They have to be transparent. Always I say, I am not a police, I am an educator, okay? And I am not looking for cheating, I am looking for you learn. How much have you learned with that prompt that you put at ChatGPT or different platform, okay? And prioritize academic integrity, very, very important, but engage critically with everything that you have done with that AI. And then, for me, welcome to an education with different manners and different ways as course policies.
Maybe I move to John, because probably he has some comments about what he has just heard, and in terms of why are you then not using AI that much, or you're skeptical if it offers all these options?
In my case, it's partly a biographical issue, a long history of not avoiding entirely, but not plunging into things like big data. You know, a few years ago, it was all about big data, 10 years ago, and we were all supposed to learn big data, even ethnographers, qualitative researchers, and I somehow managed to avoid it. I managed to get by without doing it. In my own practice as an ethnographer, if you, let's say you are studying a social group, you're hanging out with them, if that social group happens to be using AI, and that's increasingly the case, so if I started doing, let's say I did offline ethnography, traditional ethnography now in a workplace, I can imagine I would have to very quickly work out how people are using AI in what ways. In my own practice, yes, I have dabbled a few times. I've tried out some writing with AIs and personas. You know, P.G. Woodhouse, the author, I did some experimenting on genre and personas. But so far, I haven't felt the urgency to do it. But I imagine sooner rather than later, it will be, also because I'm not a manager. I think managers, the sort of language that AI helps you with seems to lend itself better to managerial language. The sort of emails that I write are quite brief, and I write them myself. I don't usually, rarely have I needed to resort to AI, but I think sooner rather than later, I'm taking notes here. I imagine I will have to selectively take on some more AI skills. But I think the problem, I think that many of us find ourselves in this question of, you're busy with your work anyway. In order to save time with AI, you need to invest a lot of time first. Learning, you're not going to learn it. And I've been to workshops. It seems to me that the general tenor at university is, well, yes, let's learn it as quickly as possible, but it's not going to be immediate for most of us.
Honestly, the more I work with the public sector, I see the time they spend learning one tool to be replaced and learn different skills. I think it's in terms of productivity enhancements, they are not there in those cases. If I move to Oscar and Ramona, to ask, really resonated with me when you had to make the AI speak the language of health. So that idea of the challenges that applying large language models to health data, especially in terms of the technicalities of the way to approach things and all these questions. And the same for Ramona with the GLI and the way it was used to kind of simplify things, but are you not losing the qualitative nuance and richness that are the wealth that is in the law or in legislation? So, Oscar.
So, in terms of challenges, there are many. Just to summarize, when we have the model, the large language model, usually the way it works, we just download the model, the open source model, and we have it in our servers. But in order to continue training that model so it learns the language of health, you need big data. You need a lot of data. And usually you need data sets. In this case, if we are working with hospitals in Australia, we need data from hospitals in Australia. And one of the things is just that there are not much data that is available for researchers or for secondary use. I mean, you have the data that is in the hospital, but it's very difficult, to access that data. So this is one of, I would say, the biggest challenge, because there are many reasons why we cannot access the data, but one of it is your area is governance. So here in Australia, for example, or in New South Wales, we don't have clear governance when we apply for this data with ethics committees and so on, how we can get access to text. Because as you can imagine, there are a lot of, the Privacy Act, for example, there are a lot of information contained in that data that, could be potentially, leaked. That is not going to happen because we have servers to protect that. Another thing that really worries me is just that in the old days, when I started to do AI 20 years ago, you started your model, your machine learning model or your AI model, and it was just from scratch. It was like if you have a baby, a brand new baby, and the baby was, you teach with data to that baby, or you teach with data to that baby how to do things. Nowadays, with generative AI and with large language models that work so well, only a bunch of companies or organizations around the world have the resources to produce these large language models. So then we are using them, but we don't know how they've been trained. So it's like if all of a sudden, instead of a baby, I was telling my colleague, I'm a teenager, yes, the teenager knows how to talk, but it's like, whatever. So you have to retrain your large language model, but you don't know the training process of what it learns. So in the context of health, all of a sudden you might ask a question, and then who knows what that large language model could reply. And then leading to this, it also, and Ian, I think, was talking about that a bit as well. If we think about it, for all our data or the large language models, there are only a bunch of organizations and companies around the world that are doing that. So it really worries me that, at least in Australia, we are not putting enough effort into having our own technology, and we are relying on, in companies around the world to provide some services. And I think we should, sit and think of what we want, especially in the area of health. That is an area, I don't want my data to be circulating around the world. And I think that we have to put some thought into First, how we access our own data, because just to give you an example, many or much of the data that we have to use to train our models comes from the US. And and not only from the US, but for a specific hospital in Boston, there is a very specific population, so it's not adapted to Australia per se. So I think we have to sit down, think of governance, how we use our data, how we share this data for research, and how we have technology that is also Australian, at least for health.
Thanks very much for the question, which was, do you lose some of the nuance in using technology this way in the Gender Legislative Index? And I think it's a very similar sentiment to the use of the LLMs. And I suppose the overarching message is technology I never see as the answer. The question to me is, how do we use technology to do something better that we wouldn't be able to achieve without it? And in this case, it's scale, and I don't use scale just because it's a buzzword. Scale allows us to unearth examples of gender-responsive laws that would otherwise be hidden. So if I can give you a really brief example, in 2004, the Philippines and Spain both enacted laws to help women who are victims of violence. They both enacted the same year 10 days of paid leave for victims of violence. So this is 2004. In 2018, 14 years later, when New Zealand did the same thing, The Guardian had on its front page, world first. And 3 days later, it retracted the news and said, oh, the Philippines and also parts of Canada got there first. It's so easy for these good practice pieces of legislation to be hidden. And if I can achieve scale by using machine learning, I will be able to uncover some of those examples that are otherwise not reaching Anglo-Saxon legislators. Australia only did the same in 2022. So it took us so many more years to get there, with women victims of violence missing out. It is very labour intensive. So the technology, or the AI in this case, comes in at a very late stage. We've got human evaluators in a room. I'm training up the Spanish language evaluators next week, most of whom are from Latin America. They're Latin American lawyers studying to become lawyers in Australia, so they're the dual expertise, they're expertise in women's rights. We sit through and read and comb through the bills before we even make a final evaluation. But it's a lot of data, and the machine learning allows us to say something about it. In this case, studying parliamentary committees, the machine learning is almost like a litmus test for democracy. It can tell us which of the 4 parliamentary committees are functioning the way they are, so that the law which is passed is actually better than the bill that came to Parliament in the first place. Then we know the parliamentary process is working. And so I think the machine learning allows us to tell a lot of stories that we as researchers couldn't tell alone. And then building on what John said, it's also about the cultural context. I will also do field work in each of those countries. I'm going to Spain to meet with members of the Comisión de Igualdad from the Congress from the 11th to the 15th legislatures to find out, well, what was the context in which you passed that bill on consent or gender-based violence or paternity leave? Because you can't look at the laws alone without understanding the context in which they're enacted. So it's coupling all the human with the tech together.
The final question from my side before I open the floor to the audience, and I'm going to go in reverse, starting with John coming here. Just tell me about the risk, a problem, some challenge that you see in your area of work. I think John, you mentioned bullshitting before, which was always fantastic to hear in a public audience. But what would make AI a foe in the context of your area of work or research?
Foe in my area of research. I suppose it goes back to this, just the context, the mention we just had about the context. A foe, it could be a foe if we, as researchers, as let's say qualitative researchers, field workers doing this kind of research, if we end up relying too much on it, because the bullshit I mentioned, the standardized genres, the very notion of data, the very notion that, so I mentioned big data earlier. Big data was still something for scientists, for academics. The difference now, as we heard in the keynote, is that now everyone's talking about generative AI. It's entered everyday life. So I think the danger, the foe now could be that this idea that it's all about data, it's all about metrics, that the language, the qualitative language of, say, in my own work, I never use the word data to refer to my own materials. I call them materials. I've been collecting materials. I prefer the word materials because if everything is data, to me it becomes very flat. It becomes something that you can then do certain things with, but you're missing out on the more textured, the various mediums through which you can do, through which human beings do things. And it's never going to be reduced to data. But one thing we know is that we'll never be, as humans, reduced to data.
I echo some of your words actually in terms of reliance. So, and this is coming also from an educator that I'm teaching the courses of introduction to machine learning and deep learning for health. And I see my students relying a lot on AI tools, as Macarena was saying before. And one of the things that is very funny, because they can use, for example, artificial intelligence for their assignments. But last year I started to see that the marks were decreasing, and I thought, wow, how interesting, And I was wondering, why all of a sudden we're decreasing, and then the answers were very similar to one another. And it's just that they were not even curating the answers. Probably they were just taking face validity, they were copying and pasting. So that's one thing as an educator that we have to, change the paradigm, because I think if you think about it, in the old days, universities were like the maximum exponent of knowledge in societies, whereas now we are not anymore. So in one click, you have all the knowledge in ChatGPT or on the internet, and then I think we really have to change the paradigm of what we are going to go from now, and what are we as educators or researchers or lecturers. And as Ian was saying this morning, we think linearly, and this is exponential. And in terms of health and my research, I think again I'm going to make the point of we really need governance for researchers to access data. I think the risk is if we don't do that, we are not going to have the systems that properly, or the large language models in my case, that properly adapt to the Australian context. For example, some populations that we have here, I'm talking for example about Aboriginal people, we don't have this data currently to train because we are using data from other countries. And I think in terms of health, it's very important that we have that, so we really tailor our models to our population.
Thank you so much. I am in the same way, because the challenge is to put the context, in there. And the context, when we are talking general context and also cultural and linguistic context in my case, that I am linguistic and cultural studies focused, and then just to put that context in there to be able to culturally understand what's going on, as Ramona said before, when in Spain was the consenting law, and what happened in that time and why that happened, that law. And then I think cultural understanding challenges are so important in AI, and just to have that data of the cultural and the context in every country, in every government or institution, will give us a tool. And I really like, John, as you say, the material, not the data, just to know what will be a better result. Because of course, students, as you say, Oscar, yes, they relies a lot in that artificial intelligence, but that's why we need to change. At the moment, our passive learning, that's why I rely a lot in that AI, but it will change as educators, as researchers, and we're maximizing the benefits and scaffolding with them the planning, all the data that they need, or this material to develop the critical thinking and to be able to do research or to learn in different contexts. We are addressing, I think, all the ethical issues that at the moment we have, and also the data privacy. That is another big concern when, as an educator, when a student put their data, and even, unfortunately, I hear a lot of colleagues that even put the student exam straight in AI to have a look what is the feedback or the note or the grade that they need to put the student. And in there they are putting the data completely straight, and we need to be careful also with privacy and ethical concerns that are challenged all in research and education, but the most important challenges are the context and the culture.
Thank you. I will also continue with the theme of context in terms of how is AI a foe for gender equality and women's rights. It was interesting, Ian in his keynote today said some of these things started as projects, and then when you put the project into society, it has a very different impact. And I think on top of that, it's not that we had a very equal society and then AI came along and dismantled everything. We live in a very unequal world for women, for black men, for poor people, between the global north and global south. So it's natural that AI, if not thought of, designed thoughtfully, will amplify those biases and those harms. And so what you might have in a project which is, wow, you know, a company's getting 1,000 CVs, I can help you get it down to 200 for one job. Or how cool is this? You can make a video and it's really funny, I can make it look like you're saying these things you didn't say. Then you have CV scanning tools adopted by hundreds of companies that mean certain groups are denied, or non-consensual deepfake imagery and the representational harm for women. So I think it's when you take these projects and put it in the context in which we live, where AI can be a foe, if we're not really conscious of the harms, and I also think regulating against these biases pre-deployment of the technology.
Thank you. I'd like to amplify or continue, with what which has been discussed. Three aspects. One is the sort of manage and control. A computer system starts from simple ones. So all the algorithms, models, we can actually quantify the upper bound, the lower bound, its capability. But now with AI, we lost it completely. Just AI, and then we talk about agentic AI, right? And have different model linked together, different agents. Yeah, it's so that's my huge concern. Maybe there is some kind of alignments of our human, ethics or moral can be built into those agents. I mean, it's what we have to wait to see. So that's one aspect, and the other one is to our society. Because I've been working on fake news, misinformation, but before we all rely on, we look at the data, the relationship, all that. But now with deeper fake, and all these things, they can create human-like people, actor, singing, saying. It's just extremely hard to detect, to say this is fake people or fake news or fake image. It's just almost, I don't know, at the moment it's a bit impossible. Now the last one is my main concern is increase the inequity. You see now between big company and small company, sort of poor country, rich country. I think also among people. I think that may increase dramatically with the advance of AI. So this is my huge concern.
So the floor is open. So it's up to you. I'm going to get the second microphone. Whoever. Yeah. No, there you go. I'll leave it. Thank you very much. I can try my best. Let me just get it.
Hello. Thanks everyone, that was super interesting. I think my main concern is about fake news, as you were discussing, especially related to healthcare. I am every day concerned about what's coming from the US and how they go against treatments that we know work, and how sometimes lives are lost because of bad advice from officials. And this combined with the increase of social media content that's AI generated but not fact-based. So combining those two could be dangerous, because people now get their information from the internet, and now this fake information is very easy to misinterpret and misunderstand, and to think that you're getting accurate information from a health professional what you're getting is probably the opposite. So how can we, as researchers, help this? How can we help people understand what's good information and what's been verified? And as consumers, where do we go to find the right information? Do we know? Thank you.
Any volunteers for that one?
So, very interesting question. Thank you. Are you happy if I start? Sorry, I just took the microphone. That's a very difficult question, or has a very difficult answer, and I don't have the answer, to be honest. I think I've been thinking of this for a while, and I think, there will be fake videos and fake information, and one of the ways of accessing to evidence-based information, I think, is to go to, in this case, for example, to the Ministry of Health website, or a service or a large language model that has been proven, or that it has a reputable, not reputable, but it's verified, to put that way. In terms of how to make people aware of how to, your second question, is, if they're asking something that is not true or is not real, I think we have a long way to go. I go back to my previous comment of changing the paradigm, and I think Macarena was saying something related to that, of yes, fine, you can use generative AI, for example, or even you have to go to Google, because it doesn't have to be Gen AI. In the old days, you go to, you go to Google and there is fake information as well. But we assume as lecturers that everyone knows how to use it, and that's not the case, So probably as a society, not only as as lecturers in the university, we really have to change the paradigm and really have to, I guess, have some education, and I include myself in that. I think if you think about history, when radio, for example, started to appear, it was a great thing, but also, there were a lot of fake news. Then it happened the same with television in the 1920s, 1930s, I think it was, more or less. So I think whenever we have a new technology, there is some time that is that disruptive time, and I think we really have to move forward or ahead, and probably a mixture of legislation and education. And I know that my colleague Nick doesn't like the legislation part.
Anyone else wants to give it a go? John, do you have any views about that?
There are some examples, still quite limited, but there's a podcast, for example, called Decoding the Gurus, as some of you may have heard. They recently interviewed a health expert looking at the so-called leak, the Wuhan, the lab leak conspiracy, which is likely it didn't happen. COVID probably didn't. It's looking very unlikely that it was a lab leak. That's one example. But the problem is with polarization, when people are following what their own camp are saying, whether it's, often it's the right wing, but progressives do it as well. There is a disinformation going on all over the place. And I think what is probably a good idea is when someone from your own camp decides to start following more, the science, following the evidence-based argument, that's more likely if someone that you trust from your own ideological persuasion takes that step and they're producing good content, they're doing good public intervention, that's more likely to work than someone from the enemy camp telling you that you're stupid because you're a conspiracist and you're right-wing. So.
Anyone want to other questions? Yeah.
Thank you all for being here and taking time to inform us. My question is about your interactions with technology and where you see the limitations. So as researchers, as educators, is it the pre-trained bias? Is it the context window? Is it the hallucinations? Where do you see the biggest limitations? And what's stopping you from using AI even more in your research?
All of the above.
Good answer.
President, you want to try to integrate platform? Because probably you're most qualified, technically speaking. Like, what are the limitations for you to use AI more in your research?
What's the limitation?
yeah, what is for you to use more AI? What do you think it is? What would AI need to do better so you could use it more? I suppose that's
Okay.
the way of addressing the question.
I don't use AI that much in my research because in our area we have to critically assess the existing work and all that. And when because normally we have this introduction session and then the related work. We did experiments and let the student ask ChatGPT to produce some draft for the related work. It's just useless at all. I don't think it can come to the standard what we want when we analyze each pieces of existing work. No way. Sorry.
Oh, sorry, I just wanted to ask, maybe the students don't know how to use AI properly.
I think probably I understand what you're trying to get. Maybe it needs some interaction, conversation, and then can get to that point. But for us, if I know how to ask the questions and try to I would rather just write by ourselves. So that's yeah.
Just to add to that then, let's say the capability in a year or two does get better for each of your respective fields. At what point do you think that there's an ethical obligation to actually start using AI when it is demonstrably better? Or it really starts to increase the amount of research?
I don't think that AI can be co-author, but definitely not the leading author. So that's just my final conclusion.
Can I add, I think we're talking about very different uses of AI. So for me, my hesitancy is the quality of the data. So we know a lot about women not being represented well in data. They're not, crash test dummies aren't tested on women, cancer treatments aren't tested on women, and so therefore these things don't work well for women. We're just not in the data. If I had enough data to then train an LLM to do the kind of evaluations I'm doing in the Gender Legislative Index, I would be willing to do that. I know I'm far from that kind of data set to do it well and to be able to with confidence say this is a gender responsive piece of legislation that will genuinely make women's lives better in the country. But if I got to that data set, I'd be very keen to do it. I think the hesitancy for us as scholars and writers, because writing is a big part of what we do, is to lose our voice. And I think it's really important to say the education sector right now is in a real place of flux and uncertainty. We are struggling to figure out how to tell students how much they can and can't use AI because it's all really new. We don't know whether we'll lose skills or train students badly. We don't know if there's cheating or not cheating. It's sometimes more work to mark an AI written exam than one that was written by an individual. It's a really complicated few years that we're in the middle of now. But even for us in a law faculty at UTS, we train our students on how to use AI because it would be unethical if we let them go out into the real world as lawyers and they wasted clients' time and money not using AI efficiently and effectively to do things that when I started as a lawyer 25 years ago, I spent hours and so much client money wasting that an AI can do better. So I think it just depends exactly what type of AI usage we're talking about in the education sector.
Just adding to your first question, and also I echo Ramona's words about data. Like in the area of health, for example, once we have passed all the check and balances, ethics committees, the hospital, we extracted the data. That data, for example, has to be stored in a highly secure environment. So in our case, we can only store it in a server that has been certified by New South Wales Health. So that server in the background has AWS, Amazon Web Services, but we access to a in my opinion, very limited resource. So in order to train the large language models that Ramona was saying, I don't think we have enough power. So that's one limitation. So I think part of it, and again, it's what I was saying before, we are losing the race against the big companies. I'm not saying that we don't have to have the big companies doing the research, but we need independent research doing things. And then we don't have money. So the university, at least maybe this is very controversial here. At least at UNSW, the Faculty of Medicine, that is one of the first ones in the country, we don't have enough money to pay all these resources. If Google, takes what we do, to train a large language model is months and months for Google, that they have all the data and all the resources, let alone for us at UNSW, a little bunch of researchers trying to do that with all the limitations that we have in terms of privacy, and that I agree with all of that, but we don't have enough resources. And then all the things that you said before in terms of context window, and well, ideally, yes, we want to read, because as I said, in the hospital we have a lot of text, we want, bigger, longer window, whatever, but we don't have enough resources. So now, for example, with my research, I really struggle. We really struggle to have resources, and Sandy, that is here with me, she can tell you more about it, how much we struggle to train our models.
I think we are on time, but can I take two final questions together at the panel? And was one here and one there, if I remember correctly? Yeah.
Hello, thank you. It was a great conversation. I just have a quick question. This week there was also a conference on AI made by AI in the US. I think it was by Stanford University. So you were here talking, and I think the question before was about doing the research by AI. But in this context, AI were the reviewers.
Yeah.
So what do you think about AI being the reviewers of the research?
And the other one here, yes. Just ask it.
Thank you. I see a very well-balanced panel in terms of the views that you have about generative AI. I see people who is very techno-optimist, I guess very influenced by Silicon Valley mentality, and other people that we are a bit more skeptical. And I would like to know your views in the long-term impact in humans, particularly in education. And like you mentioned that you use a tool and you're not a police checking the use it or not. But I'm thinking, as a father, as an educator, and as a researcher, how the cognitive development, the emotional and social and psychological development of the kids will be impacted in the long term. Personally, I don't expose my own kid to screens or devices or AI. I prefer, coaching, sensing, feeling, emotional training. But I think it's a generational thing, how we can or approach to the AI. And I'm framing this question in the faith and hope that I see for people who relate to generative AI. Personally, I think there is a lot of hype and it will fade in a couple of years. And I would say that we need to not forget that generative AI are just stochastic variables, right? It's a probabilistic exercise. They are perceived as intelligent, but they are not intelligent. They are perceived as accreditation, but there is no credibility. There is just probability, the connection of the words. And humans, we are way better on that exercise. I just do that as a framing, my long-term impact question.
If you can give short replies, I know they are complex questions, but for once, to be able to finish, I have a bit of networking.
I just go very quickly. In terms of AI, reviewing AI in our fields, we do it. Because, for example, we have LLMs evaluating what other LLMs are doing. Because as you can imagine, for example, now we have also doctors doing the same amount of or the same amount of work just to see if the LLM is doing well. And just every single data point is 3 hours for a doctor, whereas an LLM does it like this. And in terms of, we can talk later on. And in terms of what you said, I thought about that many times, that the LLMs are just probabilistic models, and they are, mathematically speaking. But lately I'm thinking, aren't we also probabilistic models in a way, that our past or our experience matters, and in a way, I don't know much about that, but I think it could be a very long conversation. I'm happy to talk to you later.
A long conversation with us, but yes, we are trying to put different guidelines for students, and also actually in Australia in 2023, they did a framework talking about AI with the schools and higher education also, and they are now actually reforming that framework, actually they call the framework also for AI, and they are thinking about that one, that empathy that is missing, and the competencies talking about emotional and the human, but the human interaction, if we still practice, that's why we need training for teacher and training also for student, because with AI we could still have this interaction as a human with the peer in the college, in the class, and different activities that is one part, a partner more in the class or in that project that we are doing. But we need training, we need guidelines, and a little by little everything is being doing, or we are trying to do the best in the Department of Education also, but there are a lot of gaps that we need to figure out. It also depends on the age. The majority that my studies and where is in higher education, and it's completely different than primary or secondary, that with the communities they are starting to grow. Okay, but a long conversation. Yes.
My thoughts build on Macarena's, and I think if I may call you a skeptic, I think your skepticism actually provided the framework for how we can understand this. I have an 11-year-old who Googles on her school laptop, and she will summarise the Google summary and take it as fact, but she's 11. So she doesn't have the skills and capability or maturity or knowledge and full education to do something else. Whereas us as researchers, we do. So I could get an AI to review a research paper I've written, and I'm almost certain it will tell me something I've left out. So the end result will be better. But I have years of experience working in this space, knowledge and capacity, and I'm putting in my research that I've written to make it better. And so I think that's how we have to engage with it. At UTS, we use this language, responsible use of technology, and it's been so overused that it appears in every strategy. But actually, I think there's something very sensible in that idea about how do we use this responsibly, not all the time, not at a whim, but think about how do we want to use this to engage and actually take what we're doing and do it better, because that's what AI has the potential to do. Help us to do what we were doing already, do it better, more efficiently, and more effectively.
Just address the reviewers. I tried just to review a thesis, and I gradually I got the style of ChatGPT. When they come to review, it's I have to say it's structural, but it's to me it's been superficial, because the the academic researcher review they tend to look at different things and probably more specifically. But when it comes to the specificity, I don't think ChatGPT is up to that at the moment. So that's for the review, but it's good to have it to review. It can give a very good structured sort of summary. Now, with generative AI, even the top scientists have this debate all the time. I can see the points from both sides. Now, technology-wise, it's super. I have to say, because we use it to generate synthetic data to make up some sparsity. But have to follow certain distribution. Okay, that's the good side. And also you can see the advancement in protein structure prediction. So there's a lot of advancement. Now, in the creativity, in the society part, this all these fake whatever things is generated by GAI, and also the issue is we don't know whether, some scientists say that it becomes so smart and then it may control human being at some stage. Some scientists is getting near and some says no way, it's far away. But what I can say is watch on this space. And also make sure that our kids are aware of it, and also don't let this generative AI kill our creativity. And for that, I don't know because it can generate music, it can have write poetry and all that. Whether it can beat human being or whether it has a certain creativity in it, I don't know. But one thing I'm sure, if there's an AI hairdresser, I don't want it. I want human touch.
Joe, you get to say the final word if you want.
Thank you. Is it working? Yeah, I think we've got to be very careful with these images of exponential growth. That slide we saw earlier in the keynote, that's true. There has been exponential growth. It's been quite phenomenal in terms of mainstreaming generative AI over the past 2.5 years. That's all great, but that metaphor of acceleration has to also be put in the context of the everyday cycle of human life. We have everyday practices, we have norms, institutions, and those things don't operate at much higher speeds. Some things get accelerated, but most things don't get accelerated. We're still having a face-to-face meeting here at a recognizable pace, and so on. So I think we've got to always bring it back to the embeddedness. If something is going to take off, if generative AI is going to really take root and transform everything, it will do so within the familiar cycles of the human species.
Well, thank you very much. The recognizable pace put us 15 minutes behind schedule, but we'll have to break down. And please join me in thanking the panel as well. To the break.
Probably it's too far. I'm also in ChatGPT, but I pay.
Aquí y aquí, ¿vale? Hay que darle fuerte.
Este es para pasar, ¿no?
Para pasar.
Buenas. Welcome everyone. I'm Marco Rocacusax. I was awarded the Strat Early Career Research a couple of years ago, and from that moment on, it's kind of part of my engagement with RAP to find new early researchers that are willing to contribute and that deserve this award. First of all, welcome everybody to the 4th Strat Early Career Research Award in this 2025. As you all might know at this stage, STRAP is committed in boosting the career perspective of early career Spanish researchers in the Australia-Pacific region. And to achieve this goal, the STRAP Early Career Research Award, organized by STRAP and sponsored by the Ramon Areces Foundation, aims to recognize the extraordinary research trajectories in all these early career STRAP members. The Ramon Areces Foundation, La Fundación Ramon Areces, was created in 1976 with a broad objective of fostering scientific and technical research in Spain and education and culture in general. The foundation was a pioneering institution in our country, and ever since its creation, it has constantly and firmly supported scientific research as a driving force behind progress and modernity. As you might have already noticed, compared to the previous years, and if not, I'm just going to give you some hints, hemos cambiado las cositas un poquito. From the total number of participants, which we had 7 this year, was really, we really had a lot of participation. 3 finalists have been selected to present their research careers and project proposals with RAP in this event. Also, from our part, providing them also with a platform for making themselves known and becoming more actively part of the STRAP community, which is all what we kind of want after this. This year's applicants have emerged or come from really multiple lines of research, going from the arts and the humanities, going to mathematics or environmental sciences and biology. A clear example what STRAP stands for. This year's finalist decision has not been easy. Their CVs were really well built. And the curricular level of all the candidates, also considering their total different backgrounds, which was a bit difficult sometimes to put together and evaluate in the same way. Together with their project proposals for new STRAP projects, have been altogether really high. My most sincere congratulations to the 7 of them, especially to the 3 finalists over here, which are Inmaculada Conde, Arola Moreras Martí, and Miguel Ángel Berrocal Rubio. They all have outstanding CVs at their early stage in their field, and their proposals have given us really a lot to think about. They will give their presentations as part of their final evaluation process, and the results from which will be given at around 4:30 if there's no delay in all the program. So for the three of you, I wish you all the best, and let's see if this works. Yeah, and we would have Ima come first.
So many of you here today might think that law is not a science. But it is. And as a good lawyer, that's exactly what I'm going to argue. Because as you probably know, lawyers love to argue. When we think of science, we picture laboratories, microscopes, and data. But science isn't where we work. It's about how we work. It's about method, observing, analyzing, testing, and reaching conclusions that can be verified. Law, like science, seeks methodology, just through language, not numbers. And that's exactly what I do with law. I study how small linguistic decisions, like a word, a comma, or a clause, can have a massive, measurable effect in the real world. The most important thing that a lawyer does is not actually arguing in court. It is interpreting words. Let me give you two real examples that show how a single word or even a comma can change everything. So here, the seller should deliver the goods within 30 days of contract signature. Do you think this might be simple? But it is not. When do you think the seller must deliver? Before day 30? Or exactly on day 30? It's 1 day difference. This was the same interpretative issue in the Nigeria case, a real case, where the court found that the correct interpretation was actually exactly at 30 days. This interpretation cost Nigeria almost 11 billion. That's nearly 1/3 of Nigeria's annual budget. So one phrase interpreted one way almost bankrupt a nation. Now let's see our second example. Goods shall, unless otherwise agreed, be inspected. Or goods shall, unless otherwise agreed, be inspected. Do you see the difference between these two sentences? Just one comma. This can be interpreted in two ways. With the comma, it means inspection is the general rule, unless the parties agree otherwise. But without the comma, inspection becomes part of the agreement itself, an entirely different obligation. The result? The missing comma cost one of the parties 5 million in a settlement. So yes, words, even a comma, are very important, and their interpretation can decide the outcome of a case. So my line of research brings law and economics together. I study how legal interpretation, how we read and apply international rules, affects trade and cooperation between countries. I study how legal interpretation and analyze how judges and arbitrators interpret global trade, and how we can make this process more systematic and predictable, so that law builds trust and confidence, giving individuals and also businesses certainty when engaging in international commerce. So international trade is vital for countries and for individuals. A single misinterpretation in trade law can bankrupt a country, a business. But a well-drafted agreement can deliver decades of prosperity. In 2024, trade between Australia and the United Arab Emirates reached over 12 billion. At the Office of International Law, I was very fortunate to contribute to the legal work that supported this partnership. This was for me a practical reminder that law underlies every successful trade relationship. And trade, of course, is not only about goods and money, it's about exchange of ideas, technology, innovation, and culture. It connects nations, promotes understanding, and keeps peace. Yes, keeps peace. Because countries that trade together are far less likely to go to war. So my research aims to remove barriers in international trade law worldwide, the misunderstandings, inconsistent interpretations, and national biases that slow cooperation. But this idea, removing barriers, is also my personal story. I was born in Cadiz, in the south of Spain, the land of the Phoenicians, pioneers of maritime trade, and one of the earliest crossroads of international trade. I grew up in a small corner of the world where opportunities were rare, but dreams are very big. And those dreams carried me far, from Cadiz to Australia, working to build legal and academic bridges between Europe and Australia and the Asia Pacific. So for me and my research as well, there are no barriers, only talent, collaboration, and as we say in Spain, muchas ganas de hacer las cosas bien, the determination to do things properly. And that's exactly how international trade should work too. No barriers, just trade and cooperation between nations and people. So remember from this presentation, when we interpret the law well, we build trust. When we build trust, we build trade. And when we build trade, we build peace. Because the right words, understood the right way, don't just change contracts, they change lives, economies, and nations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Inma. Now we will have here on, I don't know what you call this, up here, Dr. Arola Moreras Martí, that will give her presentation for today.
Cool, amazing. Thank you so much for the introduction, Marcos. It's so nice to be here today. I really appreciate for Strap to select me as a finalist. Can you hear me? Like this better. Thank you. It's a little bit hard to get how close we need to be to this. So thanks to Strap for selecting me as a finalist. I come from New Zealand, Auckland, and I'll present to you my research today. Oh, here. Yeah. Okay. Let's go. So I want to start by presenting to you the question that underpins my research. I am a biogeochemist, and my overarching research scientific question is how do Earth, biosphere and geosphere interact. And on a more specific level, I'm interested in answering two questions. The first one being how do microbial life, it's gone. When I said microbial life, it just died, so maybe there's a lot like microbial life. Oh, we're just gonna give it a minute. I'm gonna have some water. Amazing, it's back. Okay, let's go. Oh no. People online can see. Okay, that's good. At least they could see. At least I can speak for the people online. Okay. Hopefully it will just say. Okay, as I was saying, do you think there's like a problem with the connection or something? Okay, if you want, meanwhile, I can explain you what I've done with my life. I am from Barcelona. I did my undergraduate in Universitat Autònoma de Barcelona, and I then moved to the UK to do my PhD in St Andrews, where I spent there like 7 years, where I also did a postdoc. After that, we moved to New Zealand with my partners. We are geologists. I did my undergraduate in geology, and we decided to move there because it's like a land of volcanoes, as you know, earthquakes, and like extremely active, geologically speaking. So being both geologists is like the perfect place to live. And it was there where I started doing some research within the universities, and I ended up having a position as a lecturer there, which I started a year ago. That's all my introduction of what I have to say. Thank you. Cool. All right. Shall I keep going now? Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Just leave it there. Just leave it there. Yeah. All right. Cool. All right. So I was saying that I was going to start presenting you the questions that underpin my research, and that I basically the main question that overarches my research is how the Earth biosphere and geosphere interact, and in particularly looking at basically how do microbial life and chemistry interact in Earth's extreme environments, with a particular look in astrobiology, life on Mars. And then the second one, which is what is the potential for microbes to sequester carbon, with a particular look at methane and these microbes that on Earth sequester methane. So overall, what I would like to say is that my research focuses on studying biogeochemical cycling of sulfur and methane. As you can see, my research is very interdisciplinary and moves across geology, biology, and chemistry. All right, so I use an array of techniques that I like to call my biogeochemical toolbox. This is a combination of different analyses and techniques which I use to provide a thorough picture of the environment that I am studying. Some of these tools are physicochemical parameters, isotopes, organic biomarkers, and also microbial community studies, for which I look at the structure, composition, and or the function as well of these microbial communities. All right, this is David Bowie, as you guys can know, and there is something that him and I have in common. I know this is really hard to believe, which is that at some point of our lives, we both ask ourselves the question, if there is life on Mars. The difference is that he wrote a pretty cool song about it, and I only wrote really boring scientific papers. So yeah, but is there really life on Mars? Or even better question, was there ever life on Mars? Go one back. Yeah, astrobiology is basically the study of life traces beyond Earth. But in order to recognize those traces, we need to understand how life leaves chemical fingerprints or evidence behind. We call these chemical fingerprints biosignatures, so fossil evidence of life, signatures of life. Kind of apologies for this very 90 figure looking, but basically what I want to show here is that biosignatures can be patterns, objects, and substances, and they can go from kilometer scale to atomic scale. In particularly, I am interested in looking at the smallest evidence of life, which are isotopes. Okay, between my PhD and first postdocs, I developed this isotope biosignature tool to distinguish between biology from non-biological processes in ancient or extraterrestrial life. This biosignature, it's called Cap33 sulfur isotope. I didn't invent Cap33 sulfur, but what I did was combine it with with delta 34 sulfur, as you can see in this plot. And basically, by doing that, we added a third dimension into the delta 34 sulfur studies, distinguishing between volcanic and non-biological signatures from microbial and biologically produced signatures. This work was recognized with awards from the UK Geochemistry Society and led to publications that are now informing Mars, but also Europa mission targets. All right, so from Mars, we're going back to Earth. And I want to say that biosignatures there are not only for astrobiology or for studying life on other planets. They are also vital for understanding the unseen microbial life that controls our planet. In particularly, the process that regulates methane cycling in the ocean seafloor. We can see an image here. It's just basically a schematic figure where we can see the different microbial processes that regulate methane in the ocean. As you know, methane is a greenhouse gas that is very important for climate change, as it's 25 more potent than CO2. So we're just like looking, basically what I do now in Auckland and in New Zealand generally, I've been these last years studying the role of methane microbial cycling of marine methane seeps and understanding the importance that have for like climate change. Cool. Methane seeps are formed by the expulsion of methane from the you can see, okay, from the subsurface of the seafloor to the ocean, to basically to the ocean water, and can even go sometimes to the atmosphere. Methane seeps are found in areas of the world that are continental margins, and they're quite widespread. Methane seeps are particularly interesting as they host two microbes that are partners, and they kind of like work together, helping each other. The first one is anaerobic methane oxidizing archaea, also called ANME, which oxidizes methane. And the second one, go back, sorry. The second one are sulfur-reducing bacteria, which reduces sulfur. Cool. This microbial friendship converts the methane into rocks, carbonates, consuming up to 90% of the upflowing methane. Yeah, so they basically called a biofilter because they consume up to 90% of the methane from these seeps. So what they do is they take the methane and they lock it and convert it into carbonate. So it's a pretty amazing process. You can see here an example of these carbonates. All of these are like carbonate rocks that are created from this biofilter. Are like all the rocks around are these like carbonate boulders that are produced by these biofilter. These carbonate platforms are not only amazing because they capture all these methane and they convert it into rocks, but they're also incredible ecosystems shelters from all these different sea fauna, like tube worms. You can see tube worms. I don't know if you guys can see a fish hiding over there. There's also clams. There's also some crabs, some sea urchins. There's like so much going on within this picture in a very small scale. So what I've been doing is studying these two seeps, methane seeps, of the New Zealand coast that are called Mangaroa and Glendu. And my work has been looking at how different environmental variables dictate this microbial biofilter. These are the profile of the methane seeps. So you can see here is the seafloor, and they go like even up to like 1,000 meters. So they like reach quite high in the water column for Mangaroa and the Glendu seep. You can see here, I think you have to click again, yeah, a video of like these methane seeps, and this is basically a rover that has been deployed and it's like poking around on these seeps. But you can see very well the carbonate boulders, all the different clams that live here. And like in this sediment, you're gonna see in a second how when the rover is poking really deep, it's like disturbing the sediments and freeing a really large amount of bubbles, like that you're seeing now happening, which are all this methane that is like captured within these seeps. Okay, so some of the results, what we observed in the microbiology profile of the seep was that sulfur-reducing bacteria was like prominent, which is something that we expected. But something we did not expect at all was that we did not observe any of the archaea that are part of this methane biofilter. Instead, we observed aerobic bacterial methanotropes, which are different. They also oxidize methane, but very, very differently, and they're not as efficient as the archaea. So we have few theories about what could be going on. The results make us think that we're basically in front of a potential leaky microbial biofilter. Some of these reasons, the first one is that we observed really high sulfide concentrations. As you can see here, some of the sulfide concentrations on the plot under for both of the seeps. And we know that these methane oxidizing archaea does not tolerate well high concentrations of sulfide. It does actually do really, really bad, and it doesn't grow well. So it could be that the concentrations are being toxic for these archaea. The second theory that we have, is that anaerobic methane oxidizing archaea grows really, really slow. And it happens that we are on an area, you see here on the black line, where we have the most important fault on New Zealand that produces the biggest earthquakes on New Zealand. So as you can see, these two seeps are really, really close in this earthquake, which means that this area is tectonically very active and there's a lot of earthquakes that happen very often. So what potentially is happening is that these earthquakes could be disturbing and not allowing these archaea to grow well. What we also have observed is that these methane oxidizing bacteria are way more efficient at growing in adverse conditions. So what we think that is happening here is that they have taken over the spot of the archaea, and they're just growing really well, and this is why we are seeing them, because they're just better at growing in kind of like uncertain, disturbing conditions. Cool, so overall, I just want to use this slide to summarize my research and to say that whether in search for life on Mars or in New Zealand methane seeps, my work kind of explores the microbes that shape, basically record planetary processes through sulfur, but also methane biogeochemically cycling, which is what I look at. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sarola, and my sincere apologies for all that hassle. Hope it doesn't happen again. So now I'm happy to present Dr. Miguel Ángel Berrocal Rubio. Will give the last presentation of, please come over. We'll give the last presentation from the finalists.
All right. I'm going to try my best to press it strongly. Taking a slightly different approach to my presentation. Most of you here don't know me, so I've made it a bit more personal, a bit about my career and how I got here. So my name is Miguel Ángel Berrocal Rubio, as you can see up there. And I am a doctor in genetics and immunology. My main interest has always been understanding how we develop. So where are the instructions hidden in our genome to develop as an organism? And how can we harness the potential that is in these instructions to prevent things like complications during pregnancy, but also to fix problems like tissue regeneration? And getting here has not been easy. It's been a journey. And so what I'm going to be presenting to you about today is my journey. So this journey, as most of our journeys, starts in Spain, where I undertook my undergraduate studies in biology at the Autonomous University of Madrid for 4 years. And within these studies, my final year project here is what started me on developmental biology. So under the supervision of Jonathan Benito Sipos, we discovered this new type of neuron in the Drosophila brain that had never been seen before, and that has a unique use in the feeding behaviors of the larvae of Drosophila, which is important for crop production, but also shows that we're still discovering neural types and neuropeptides. During this time, I was also my year rep, a member of the biology commission, and the deputy ombudsman for the whole university. And I think this is what introduced me to the importance of mediation and diplomacy, which took on later on in my career, but started me getting interested in how scientists have to be more than just scientists, and we also have to understand a bit more of the environment that surrounds us to do our science and to bring it to the people. I went one too long. And so my achievements during my undergrad granted me the La Caixa Fellowship, which is a very prestigious scholarship that then helped me fund my master's. But within my bachelor's, I was also given the opportunity to do an Erasmus, in which I went to the UK. And so as the top-ranked student for my university, I could have first pick, and I picked Imperial College, and I studied my undergrad there for a year. And under the supervision of Colin Turnbull and Rosa Cogollo, we studied also how growth factors affect development of roots and shoots, and how we can improve the yield of crops, which you might think is not related, but it's all understanding how different organisms develop, and how a root develops is not too different to how your finger develops. And so later on, with the help of my previous studies and that fellowship, I undertook my master's in biophysics, biotechnology, and biochemistry at the Catholic University of Leuven, where I was awarded the summa cum laude and valedictorian of my year. And the main academic outcome was this publication in which my role was to develop new cell culture technique to culture human neural tube organoids. And so the neural tube is this structure that we only have as an embryo. It disappears as we grow up. But it's basically what becomes our brain and our spine. And so developing these models in vitro is hard, but we managed to do it, and we got this high impact publication out of it. And in turn, it's become a therapy in which we can take patients and do personalized medicine, in which we can treat birth defects like spina bifida. So I'm really happy that that's how it's going. And to the topic of AI today, we use machine learning to analyze the patterning of these organoids. So even back then in 2018, we were already using these models to aid science. Special part of my heart is that during this time, I was also part of FEBE, which is the Spanish scientific community in Belgium. I became a member as soon as I arrived in 2017. You can see me there. We will later become our team preparing an exposition of art and science together with the embassy and the Cervantes Institute. Later on, still as a member, I organized this paella and sangria day at my house, and it was our biggest recruiting event ever. So there's things that are very popular everywhere. And thanks to that, I also volunteered the next 2 years as the vice president, hosting events both in Belgium and in Madrid with the Fundación Ramón Areces. And later on, participated as well in the Raíces events. So for those of you who don't know what this is, Raíces is all about bringing the best working conditions to our researchers, both nationally and internationally. And this was a really important learning lesson for me in terms of scientific diplomacy. After that, 2020 happened, so nothing happened in that year. But 2021, with an exemption from the government, I managed to arrive in Australia, where under the supervision of Christine Wells, I took on my PhD. And in this PhD, I was trying to understand development from a slightly different point of view. I was trying to understand how immune cells, which are present very early on in our embryos, are shaping tissues and organs, because we see these in adult tissues. And so the outcomes of that is that we discovered a whole group of new proteins within the NRG1 gene that are essential for tissue development in essential organs like the brain, the heart, or the gut. And we can apply some of our discoveries to therapies in neuropathological disorders like Parkinson's. So we've also published this other paper in how we use grafted neurons to prevent Parkinson's. So these are the 2 papers that we've published from my thesis, but there's 4 more under review. And I'm especially, that one's covered, but it's all good. The 2 in the middle, I'm especially happy about because they've been pre-accepted already by the Nature flagship journal and Nature Genetics. So that's very satisfying. And especially the second one, in which I'm the first author, we are reporting the discovery of 200 new human genes and more than 17,000 gene products, including RNAs and proteins. And so I think it is important as well in a climate of application like the Australian one in science to bring a bit of visibility to the base science that is needed to then understand, interpret, and apply. And so, for example, the discovery of those Drosophila neurons would have been important to the 3D models that were shown before by the keynote on how you can build a whole brain. You cannot interpret the whole brain without the small parts and the fundamental science that some of us do. And so discovering these new genes in immune cells and development could lead to understanding how these developmental defects happen or defects in the immune system. And now, as I've just finished my PhD a few months ago, I've started my new role as a postdoctoral researcher, and I'm doing this at the Murdoch's Children Institute in Melbourne. And I'm doing this under the supervision of Nigel Curtis and Nicole Messina. And so my role here is to understand how the immune system shapes us and protects us in early infancy, so neonates, which is the first month after birth, and how it compares to adults. And so in here, we are comparing how certain vaccines protect babies as they're just born, but are not as effective as adults. And the population that I'm studying is a cohort of almost 7,000 participants across places like Brazil, but also Spain and Australia. In this case, trying to protect our people and using these vaccines for off-target beneficial effects. And in this instance, the vaccine that I work on is BCG, which is a tuberculosis vaccine. This vaccine is an attenuated bacteria that helps the body generate antibodies against the real tuberculosis. But understanding the off-target effects can be very beneficial. And by chance, one of my friends sadly developed bladder cancer, and his therapy is this vaccine. So his therapy for a cancer is an attenuated bacteria that helps train his immune system, makes it more aware and more active, and his cancer is in regression. So understanding these fundamental questions of science can also save lives and have applications. And my last cheeky slide is a bit of why I think this prize would be important for me. And I think it is important to me because I've just finished my PhD, and obviously for most of us, stability and security in terms of jobs and funding is very important, also for visa. I think bringing visibility to fundamental science and the science that Spanish researchers do is very important, even within my institute. I've received a lot of support to be here today. I already have a plan on what I'll use the money for, and it's a conference next year. And especially connecting back to the ethics and SRAP communities, which I really miss from my times in Belgium, but I think I can already take that one off. That's it. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, the three of you. Just a heads up, they were not given by me any directions on what to present. They were given total freedom. That's why the presentations are the three of them. I had to say that out loud prior to that. We'll give the results after the committee has a short meeting, okay?
Back. Okay, so we're back. And I have received a very precise instruction that the Australian Museum is going to close if we are late. So we're going to be logged in. I'm going to ask the people in this panel, Pablo Roman, Macarena Rodillo, Juan Antonio López Vergara, and Claudia Vázquez, to please come and join me here so we can start as fast as possible. Thank you. So as you can see on the program, this is about, again, AI friends of Foro, but instead of taking the academic perspective, this is the practitioner's perspective. It's people that they use AI at work, and we have repeats here, Macarena, because obviously she's wearing two hats in one. And I will quickly introduce all of our panelists, because this is going to be more of a conversation, short questions type thing. So Claudia Vázquez was born in Chile, holds a PhD in philosophy, and is completing a master's degree in security and international relations at Melbourne, and is starting another doctorate. Let's not comment on the dependence on studies, intensive studies, and he works as a journalist and content producer for SBS Spanish. And then Macarena, I have introduced her before, but just as a reminder, and that I didn't mention, I left for now. Her outstanding contribution to teaching methodology in student learning has received awards both of the use of generative AI and fostering the sense of global citizenship. Pablo Roman is Senior Legal Counsel at Health Direct Australia. If you don't know what that is, you can Google it. It took me a while. And he advises on complex, he's a lawyer, he advises on complex legal issues at the intersection of artificial intelligence, data governance, regulatory compliance. He has worked in ICT for quite a while, as far as I know. And finally, Juan Antonio López Vergara, is the head of innovation and process at Foro, Australia, and they are leading transformation in operational standards and competency management across energy and infrastructure projects. I think Ferrovial needs no introduction, it's not like those. So, starting with the order of the panelists, I will start with Pablo. And I would ask him, how is AI changing, well, the lawyer bias to lawyer bias, how is AI changing the way in-house legal teams manage contracts? And for those of you who do not know this, maybe you need to give a short intro about this contract management in-house.
Sure.
Sure.
Is this working, or can you hear me?
No.
I actually have to turn it on. Okay, thank you so much for that. So a bit about, I guess, I'm in-house. Obviously, I work for companies and I assist them in, I guess, mitigating the risks and also making sure that their contracts are compliant and, I guess, meeting their requirements. I love contracts. I live and die by contracts. Contracts give me a sense of control in a world full of chaos. And so AI is exciting in terms of, if I can talk from a personal perspective on a day-to-day basis, the use of AI has revolutionized, I guess, the way that I'm able to get rid of the low-hanging fruit, so to speak, and really focus on kind of bigger strategy, larger negotiations, and I guess more complex legal questions. I get in my line of work, I get asked a lot to undertake risk reviews of contracts, which basically means that the business that I report to ultimately is already going to go ahead with the contract. They just simply want to understand what the risks are in that contract. And so using AI has been revolutionary in cutting down times to be able to do that really quick work, obviously massaging the information that AI then outputs, because it still hallucinates, and obviously as a lawyer I still need to be able to stand behind my advice and my opinion, but that has been really, really helpful. It's also really helpful to run, I guess, large language modeling across different organizational policies that then can also affect and help impact the delivery of advice. With that being said, there are a lot of risks still, of course, and I am still a lawyer, and so I still see the world as half empty as opposed to half full by virtue of the training that I've received. And so we are always asking about questions around, well, confidentiality, what's happening to our data when we are using AI, who owns the intellectual property that is being output, but also what's the broader impact that it's having on, I guess, societies, and also, given the fact that we live in the global north, the impact that it might be having on our global south around the world. So a really exciting time from a purely pragmatic, practical perspective, but personally I can't stop thinking also about the broader ethical implications that the ongoing use of AI will have.
Excellent. I will have another question. Macarena, you told us before about how you use it in class and in preparation. Can you tell me a bit about how you use it for student engagement and probably in that context?
For student engagement, I try to change all the activities that I prepare in the class. As I presented before, it's very different to see an image that start to go inside of that image and to be able to speak with the artist or to be able to do an interaction in there. And one thing that I do is to try to shift the words that I use in my class. I am more AA friend than a foe, but we told before that there are different perspectives and different ways to see it, because also it's a foe for me, but more I try to put like a friend. And in this case, I use shift of the words, and I try to do as one of my colleagues in Sydney Uni said, and you, that is a professor in educational technology, always says to me, Maka, change the shift of the word. For example, we can change to allow a student to use AI to prohibit it. Okay? That is still, for me, allow or prohibited, still not really good. What about if I say AI could be helpful or unhelpful? Okay? And in that way, I can change a little bit. And AI to assist the student to develop their learning. And developing also their own voice. That's why I use critical thinking when I am using AI with the student. The student, they need to write an essay or whatever, and later they put an AI and they think, okay, what do you think? After to reading that article, after to watching that video and everything, do you think that the result that we have in that program where AI is correct, is not correct? What do you think? And then they start to think. Then in that way, they are putting the voice to AI. Another shift of the words, instead to use AI for all the answer, okay, they don't know the answer. I teach also intercultural communication or contemporary Spain, and they have assessment to do, but they use AI for answer. Okay, yes, but what about if we use like a learning process? Okay, we use the same. We are emphasize that critical thinking and like a learning journal. Is your partner, is your peer that you are doing in the class and also you are doing with AI. And talking about that one, we are talking about the guide of exploration of education. And we come back then to between change the word for cheating with collaboration with AI. AI can give us something. And then before Ramona said to rewrite things, to put your things and to say, okay, this one I could do better. What do you think of in that way? Okay, so I can always encourage the student to see AI as a partner, to see like a helper in the process for the final result, but not to give you just the answer. And then I am shifting just a couple of words that could be there. And also I said before that I use like a menu, okay? I use like when we go to the restaurant, we use something and we like to eat something and another one no. And then AI will give you the different notion depending on the application and the way that you are using. But of course, plagiarism, always, as educator, as I said before, I am a police, I am an educator. And then I will change for responsible use. How you be responsible, how you put in the reference, how do you use, okay? So I do progressive planning for my students that I said before, we need to train to them how we will have the best result to use AI. And also, one thing that always I hear in a lot of forums, in a lot of conferences I have been doing for many years, but more focusing AI, is this sentence. AI can never, Macarena, do X, Y, and Z. Okay, this one, they are doing already a lot that 3 years ago, that 15 years ago. Okay, but do you know X, Y, and Z is uniquely human? Okay, yes, but something is shifting and the AI is going very, very fast. Of course, it's not human, but what about if we change? We say, for example, we will always value human doing things, X, Y, and Z, and maybe we think in that way the value that we put as a human will be another shift to do that part. And just to focus in one of the big conference that we have in Perth this year with Higher Education Research and Development Society in Australia, the key speaker, Runa Harper, just said, make room for us to be critical of AI itself. And then I just would like us to finish with that, with a little bit of reflection. Thank you.
That's great. Let's move now to a completely different domain. When we had the Pinchos and research, what was this, 3 years ago? Yeah. I talked to one of your colleagues for another construction company, and they said, how is AI affecting your business? I told them, well, the formula of concrete has existed for 2,000 years, so it's barely ever going to affect any kind of business that we're doing. But I see now that obviously large-scale infrastructure and energy projects are being managed in a different way with AI. Can you tell us a bit about it?
I think I was actually part of that conversation, and that was Eric Blanco, my boss, saying that we have been digging holes the same way for hundreds of years, and perhaps we're not going to change it. Perhaps it's right, but we're changing the approach. We're changing the approach to be more efficient and to try to reduce risk in our operations. We're changing the approach on getting these tools for workers and as well supervisors to be better. First, our supervisors. We have people that have been in the industry for years and perhaps they are not tech-driven, but we're giving them these tools that they can have a natural language to communicate with that is making them to actually utilize them. On the past, we have no. You have to use this platform, but we're not going to give you more than this training. We are expecting from you to actually utilize it. Right now, they have a tool that they can talk to. They can have perhaps an agent that will help them to actually use the tools that we are requiring them. Engineers, for example. A good example of the utilization on AI and how it's changing the construction industry will be, let's say, surveyors or progress tracking. Right now, we can fly a drone across our sites and an AI software can actually detect of how much was the progress within that week. It can give actually value of what we have performed on site. What are the issues that we may have if we merge that information that is taken from images with other information that we might have in our environment. The commercial team or the legal team, previously they had to go line by line in all those contracts, and we managed maybe 500 different contracts and find ambiguities among them. We have now tools that can have an interaction with our head contracts and the subcontracts and find issues among all of them. So we're gaining efficiency. On that one, for example, it's 80% increase of efficiencies. That's a big number. Other items. Now we at Ferrovial, we're working in autonomous equipment, and we are facing the challenge of what is going to happen in the next 2, 3, 5, or 10 years. Are we going to have autonomous operations and equipment that perhaps will go solo on site and a roller will be rolling by itself and perhaps a supervisor controlling a set of equipment and removing risk from our operations? Are we going to make people enter into a tunnel, which is actually a complex environment, if we can have a machine doing that for us? This is where we're heavily investing, and that's how the sector is actually changing. We're already doing those small changes slowly because changes take time, but we're actually adopting them very well. The industry is changing for the first time in centuries, I will say.
Sorry, I didn't remember it was your boss who made it. Let's move to Claudio, like a different domain again. Claudio, for more than 20 years, he has worked as a correspondent in conflict and disaster zones, and currently he works as a journalist and content producer for SBS in Spanish. And you have a podcast series about artificial intelligence and how it is affecting. So how is it affecting the media and communication?
Hello everyone, and thank you for the invitation. I would like to say that I'm not speaking on behalf of SBS. Otherwise, this is going to be my last day. Now, I would like to talk about our friend or foe, the algorithm. It's like a god now. And the media landscape and journalism is changing very quickly. And we have to, well, get the favor of the algorithm now. In the good old times, for example, we used to work in a different way. For example, we choose interesting news, we create interesting headlines, an image maybe that describe the news and everything, but now it's different because the algorithm dictates what is going viral, what you get on your feed, Instagram, Facebook, whatever. And now the competition in the media landscape is harsh, is fierce. We are not competing just with other media outlets, we are competing against, for example, influencers or other content producers that maybe don't belong to any media. So we are all trying to please the algorithm, and the algorithm is like a god, you don't know what he wants. So, but yeah, we know there are some words, some images that the algorithm prefer. If the algorithm is happy, they're gonna viralize or they're gonna put you on your feed. The thing that is concerning is the media. We are adapting to algorithm and not the other way around. And this is something, as I say, is concerning because obviously this is standardized, the thinking, and now many people, I don't know, you get on social media and you get your feed, and I don't know, some of you probably prefer current affairs, some other dogs or cats like me, or different things. And we as journalists, we have to engage. I know that there are many academics here, and the publish or perish, that famous phrase. For us, it's engage or perish, or to be listened, or to be read or perish. So obviously, we have to. Our mission is to get there, get in your phones, on your computers, or your TVs. So obviously, maybe some journalists, some medias are working in a different way, and that's admirable, like an outcast. But obviously, our work, if nobody's listening, if nobody's reading, is worthless. So this is something, one of the ways that artificial intelligence is changing our landscape. Another way that I would like to highlight very quickly is about images or videos or voices created by artificial intelligence. And this is very interesting, and I'm going to try to reflect as a philosopher as well, because when we talk about truth, when we talk about what is real, what is fake. For example, now obviously we use a lot of images created by artificial intelligence or videos or voices. And sometimes they're very useful. For example, if we are covering news from a place that we don't have the right picture or any picture, we can create that and maybe a very descriptive image. I'm sure we can put there, yeah, image is created by artificial intelligence. So we are not lying to you, but obviously, well, many people don't read these things written in small letters, but they're sometimes very helpful. No, I mean, because they're descriptive. But is this ethical or not? Do you trust on us? Do you rely on us that we are providing you like the truth or not? So this is for me some of the things that are very important. How artificial intelligence is changing our work and the media landscape.
Probably I'd like to do a question for the four of you because they're kind of related topics. But starting with you, Claudio, on the ethical side. So there are productivity gains to be had. There are obvious advantages of having it at hand. How do we do it? What can we do to be sure that future work, the future use of AI is more ethical within your context? So keep me there. We need to.
No, sure. Thank you for the question. Well, critical thinking is very important. Discussions. I would like to refer also to my series of podcasts, Artificial Intelligence. It's called Un Futuro Artificial or Artificial Future. I'm not algorithm, but I can recommend this content. Actually, Angel was part of this. Many other experts in their field of work. We had this discussion as well about the bias of how to be more ethical, and I think it's necessary. I know that this is going very quickly, going very fast, but we have to stop a little bit and talk about it. And this is very important. This kind of meeting is very important to listen to different experts in different fields and how the artificial intelligence is changing, it's reshaping our landscapes, our world, but also talk about what is ethical, because this is a huge discussion. I mean, what is good, what is bad, what is allowed to do or not. So we don't have just one answer, but that's why discussions and conversation are so important. Listen other people and see what is how our work is affecting others as well. And me as a journalist, as a philosopher as well, it's very important this because obviously you, the listener, the readers, the people who are consuming our content are getting affected by what we are doing. So for me, discussion and critical thinking is very fundamental. Discussion and critical thinking. Okay.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Claudio. Discussion, critical thinking, and to put the conversation on the table with everyone, as we are doing here, academics, different companies, different sectors, is really, really important. I think the communication and the conversation, in my case, with educators, the policymakers, the technology developers, I think we need to put all together to ensure the AI is ethical in education in my case, and is also human-centered. Also, talking about the ethical framework is very important to develop it and implement all the guidelines that a little by little we are developing, but always need more because, as we said before, AI is doing very, very fast and faster than we are doing developing all the papers and addressing privacy and ethical issues. I would like to just question that one of the last conference in the UNESCO in July was this one. They put all together, and the thing that they focused more was the inclusive humans, the human part, and also the ethical issues. And as educator, always is something that we express, that ethical, and will be a very long conversation as we say, what is really ethical in education? Okay? That's it.
Pablo, if I can ask you to ask a question also from the perspective, because I know there are many providers offering the technology. So when you have to engage with someone offering you something you can use for your professional work, that becomes even like a different and more complex question about being ethical. So if you could also talk about that.
Oh, okay. So first of all, yes, I agree. I guess in our context at Health Direct Australia, we have an AI governance committee that has a lot of people at the table who have very different perspectives on how to use AI. Some people are very much like, everything should be AI, and some other people are like, let's pull the handbrake. And I guess I sit somewhere in the middle where we need to, I guess, slow down and think and talk about these things. But also, I also believe that AI, unlike some other technologies that we've had in our history of humanity, it's not going to be a set and forget. It's going to be a technology that is, I think one of the ways to think about it is that the worst of it is right now. This is the worst it's going to be, and tomorrow it's going to get better, and so on and so on. So it's going to be an ongoing conversation. I think corporates and universities are going to have to grapple with that, about the fact that it's going to take time and effort. In terms of your question around the ethics around purchasing AI, I guess it's a live question, and I think it's something that from my perspective as a lawyer, I'm only there to advise. I'm not a decision maker. Okay, so that is all. As much as I would love to make decisions for people, right? But no, I'm only an advisor. There's a concept about a juridical fact, right? So for example, I can bring to the table and say, ABC Corporation, who also provides AI as an algorithm to provide me with to provide me with a tool that will help streamline my work, also happens to be selling AI funded, bombs that are dropping somewhere in the world. So I guess, from my perspective, I can say, yes, these are all the corporate and commercial benefits of purchasing this tool, but we also need to bear in mind, and again, I bring it back to the juridical fact. It is a fact that exists, that AI is also being used for not so good purposes, and that needs to be weighed up. That needs to be discussed again, and I think that is part of the ongoing conversation. But my role as a lawyer is to purely bring it up to the table and put it in front of, my executives and the decision makers, and empower them to make those decisions, but also make those decisions with the most amount of information they have in front of them. Yeah, very legal answer.
Well, Antonio, I want to ask also in the context of an organization as big as Ferrovial and so diverse in the markets it operates, that probably that's also a challenge beyond the ethical use of AI. Maybe you don't get that visibility from here, but if you can think how you're doing it here, but also like if you have to do it at a bigger scale, could you think of ways of doing it?
We're doing it globally. So let me probably explain you the framework first. Governance. We have set up a governance strategy globally where we are actually first provided AI to most of the employees within Ferrovial Construction globally, not only in Australia. As I said, in Australia we have 100% participation in Copilot products and initiative we're having here, but globally the usage is between 60 to 80%. With that, what we have identified that we had to provide training to workers, and we had to provide perhaps those communities where they can discuss and talk around AI. So we have created what we have called the AI champions. We have around 260 AI champions globally where we meet all together and we create initiatives. We have even done a contest now globally over the last few months to put our words to actually try to introduce how we can get better within the industry. But what we're doing as well within those environments is to try to not control, give free to everyone, but make them accountable and liable. So we're telling them, look, this is good, but we want traceability. We want you to be transparent. If you're using AI, it's fine. We want you to use AI. But tell the rest of the people that what you're doing. Just try to produce the work up to your standards, but consider AI as part of your team. If AI is doing something for you, you're accountable. You have to say that you have used it. Or if you're not saying it, it's your work. You have to sign it by your name, and that's a risk. And you have to take on that one and assume the risk and mitigate it yourself.
We only have 5 minutes left, so I'm just going to open the floor to the audience. I am telling you that if you don't have questions quickly, I have plenty of time. Please go ahead. Seriously? Okay, Iman. Oh, I think you need to wait for the microphone. Sorry, we have 10 minutes, not 5. So Sorry.
I know there are two audiences in this panel, so I'm going to ask you a question that everyone welcome to answer. What do you think of in terms of liability? If you rely on AI, and you actually rely on AI, get out an outcome that was expected. What do you think?
That is $1 million question. So I guess, again, I'll talk from my perspective, or from my experience. So I still, because I'm a contract nerd, and as you said, contracts, a comma can change an outcome, which I really appreciated because I was like, oh my God, yes, she gets it. I still massage the output of what AI is giving me, right? So I'm not setting and forgetting. It's something that and it's something that I'm teaching my paralegal to say, of course, use it if it's going to increase your, I hate this word, productivity and efficiency, then by all means. But ultimately, I have to stand behind the advice that I'm providing. So, and as you can appreciate, it is still providing slop. Like there's still sometimes when the AI does hallucinate. So I personally don't think I'm there yet where I can simply palm off liability. And also within contracts, in terms of if organizations are purchasing AI systems or embedding AI systems into their processes, then I think there needs to be bespoke liability regimes that look at who's accountable. As we know, AI learning large language models in particular are black boxes, so we don't really know how they begin to learn after they've learned. So organizations need to get comfortable with, I guess, the levels of risk and being able to, whether or not insurance companies are willing to cover that is going to be, I think, an ongoing conversation.
I'm not taking this one, I don't think it's... Can I ask? Oh, sorry, yes.
Yes, one question, because she mentioned ethics and AI.
Sorry, wait for a second.
I think Margarita, she mentioned ethics and AI. Is there already international agreement on particular standard on ethics? Because there's a lot of relativism around ethics. My ethics might not be your ethics. Who agrees on what? How you get that introduced into the AI?
Yes, good question. It's the same that we say with Claudio. Ethics is a big different, long conversation to know what is ethics or not in education. But for example, I am one of the persons that we are doing all the guidelines for using AI at university, at UTS and Sydney Uni. We are trying to use the student to do a scaffolding with them when they can use it, in which way they can use it, and also training the student in different faculties and different disciplines to be able to have the maximum benefits from the AI. And then ethical in the meaning that they know as a researcher, in the way as educator, that they will be able to use in some of the assessment or in some of the projects that they are developing, but also they need to put in the reference, they need to put they have been using that in this period or in this part of the assessment. In that way, ethical in the meaning of that. But there are a lot of ways because also the ethical word means a lot of things depending on the discipline and depend on the assessment that they are doing, etc. Then it is hard to talk about the AI with ethical with education because it has to be specific for each discipline.
I'm going to intervene in this one very quickly. The first international framework for artificial intelligence actually was an ethics framework that UNESCO resolution that was passed with no votes against it in 2021.
Yeah.
So pretty much we cannot agree on law, but apparently we can agree on ethics as a bilateral level.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. And also they are doing, there is a big framework that they did in the European Union. Here in Australia they did another one in 2023 that they call the framework. Now they are developing and trying to update that one. but because we need to have a look as primary, secondary, and high institution, high education are completely different. At the moment, they put everything together. Sorry, it's a little bit honest. Okay, like there is things that they agree, but there's still a lot of way for developing.
I just would like to add something. I agree with the question, it's a very important question, and I think that we're not talking about much about who is behind these platforms.
Yes.
Because the artificial intelligence is a tool, like a hammer, we can build a house or we can destroy the house, but who is behind this? I mean, we know that there are famous platforms with people with a lot of money or with intention. We don't know their intentions. So also it's important to talk about that, not just because artificial intelligence, you can use it for good things or bad things. And sometimes, yeah, of course, we think that the government, they are controlling this. I'm not so sure about that. So this is something that actually with the conversation with many of the experts raised up is, yeah, I mean, it's not artificial intelligence itself. It's who is behind, who is teaching things, what kind of things they are teaching to the artificial intelligence. So also for me, this is a very important discussion, who is behind, what are their intentions with these platforms.
I have a question here at the front, which probably will be the last one, unless that tells me otherwise.
It's more a comment than a question. For me, one of the things about AI at the moment is that AI is advancing so fast that everyone is playing catch up. Everyone is playing catch up on laws that are related to the usage of AI, the liabilities, etc. Everyone is playing catch up on media. What do we need to say? How do we need to say it? Do we need to advertise that it's an AI-generated image? All the videos that are running on the internet, we don't know if it's AI-generated or not. There's no way of knowing when AI is being used, how it's being used, the legal consequences of that usage, etc. So I think that we are, as a society, playing catch up with AI. AI is going way too fast, and the laws are too slow, and the consequences of the usage of AI, good or bad, are difficult to manage.
There is a regulatory theory called the Collins dilemma, which basically says that when you try to regulate something and it's still developing, it's too early to regulate it because you don't know exactly what to regulate. And the moment you try to regulate it because you know enough, it's already entrenched, so you cannot regulate it because it has so much power, it's impossible to regulate. I feel very tempted to ask you a very short question about robotics and AI. I suppose like in all your domains, like if you combine at the current level, we're still talking about data and database stuff. But if you think about it as in the physical world, what can AI do if you use it for a robot? And maybe Ferrovial, I think maybe has, but probably you have explored this in the context of machine.
We are exploring. So, for instance, I was in a meeting the other day talking about robotics in a solar plant that perhaps we want to build in Australia in the future, but we were talking about solutions that we are using currently in the US. So we're finding efficiencies. So we're not having labors on the operation, and we have autonomous equipment doing the pile, go to the next pile, go to the next pile with no error. So there's no rework to be done. There is no compute to be break, and it's a finished product. So robotic is a thing that is coming, and it's coming really fast. The predictions is in 10 years, perhaps. Most of our operations, not most, but general operations on the site, I would say earthworks, perhaps some piling work, concrete works, perhaps the robotics will have a big interaction in them. It's already happened. We may not see in the major construction sites in here, but I know that in specific in Texas, apparently it's booming at the moment.
Wow.
Anyone else?
No, I just like to say that we are not talking much about quantum computers. This is going to be cool. If you are playing catch up, this is going to be a good thing because this is going to be a revolution. I know that artificial intelligence is a revolution of quantum computing. We don't know what is going to happen in the future. Probably, it's going to change the landscape deeply. So, as I say, I agree with you, and we are trying to create create laws and everything to regulate this, maybe in a few years it's going to change again and we're going to start to a lot of different laws and regulations. Interesting, but also a little bit scary.
We're precisely on time, so let me join me in thanking them. I think it was fantastic.
Thank you very much for that fantastic panel discussion with many things to be talking and discussing about the IA and all the fantastic conversations that we have had today. I have right now the honor of having a couple of the last section of our forum with a couple of awards. But before going there, we're still on time, I forgot to mention at the beginning that is actually IA. Of course, probably you have already realized about that. But that was what IA did. I don't remember which one, the one I used, one of the tip standard ones, when I provided what the idea that we had about the forum when we were preparing the program. So, which is quite interesting. Also, I really want to thank everyone who have come here, because we have had, a fantastic audience today here. Many people that have attended. So we actually use this, that sounds, Mariano, I couldn't help myself, I have to show this. With an IA tool, just to show what we can do, or when we try to do the same thing with this image, the IA is this. So starting to be a bit, interesting. Anyway, sorry, enough. I have a little surprise for someone today, because this was not in the program, but I think that is actually a reward, that recognition that the not only the SRAT president, but also part of the board, to someone who have been doing plenty of things lately for improving the relationship with the SRAP and the communication and so on. And for me, it is an honor, because this person doesn't know that it's going to happen, because it is going to be for Ivan Martinez Botella, because he has been doing a fantastic work leading SRAP in Melbourne, Victoria, coordinating great events and engaging SRAP members. I will say it for you. He is right now fundamental for all the things we are growing in Victoria and in Melbourne, and I will say in SRAP in general. So I really want to thank you for all that hard work that you are doing. It is not only me, it is the rest of the board that we have tried to keep it in secret. We did it. Anyway. And then I leave it to Marcos.
Hi again. First of all, I have to say it's been tough. As mentioned before, CVs have been difficult to evaluate because they come from, as you've seen, very different backgrounds, and sometimes putting that in perspective and also getting your own background out of the way can be a bit tricky. But overall, in discussing it with the other members of the committee, we have decided that Ms. Inmaculada Conde receives the first prize. We would also like the other finalists to come on stage.
Quédate aquí.
And for concluding, we have our honorary president, Professor Sergio León Zabal, who is going to say some few words. You have 9 minutes.
9 minutes?
9 minutes. You can keep going. Keep going.
You're going for a treat then.
Before I really want to congratulate all the speakers today. Thank you very much for the contribution, and also to the 3 finalists of the research Early Career Research Award. I think that the 3 of you really deserve it. I don't know how they did it. It was really tough. So congrats to the three of you. And I leave you.
Thank you. Yeah, I was just going to say that it was very hard to decide the winner. You guys are amazing, and we are safe with the talent that we have in Australia coming from with the Spanish background. So I'm going to try to keep it sweet and short. You guys all know me. I normally close things very quick, but today, since I got 9 minutes, so I'm going to try to say something that had not been discussed, and I would like to put it there for you to take home. One thing we're talking, I heard about critical thinking. I heard about bullshit. Love that, because we think about it, but we don't say it. So thank you, John, for that. And one thing that I would like to put in perspective, what I can see from teaching kids at the university, is that the issue is not only the AI. The issue is that we are in a new generation, which the information have become like the fast food, have become very quick. It's an instant answer. It's the instant reward of getting that answer online. And what happened with that? That actually prohibits the use of critical thinking. And that's one of the things that we're fighting against. It's not, I don't think that it's an issue of artificial intelligence. It's a foreign entity to us, not at all. What I think is actually we are not coping, not with Foro AI, but we're not coping on how to educate people how to use it, even ourselves, because the generation who's creating AI is running catch up, as have been commented before. And I think that is that connection between the critical thinking and having something that is moving too fast, what is actually one of the main issues, I'll say. But now, the question on the forum was artificial intelligence, friend or foe? I'm not sure if we have decided on that. I guess that everybody will got their own opinion. But what I did, actually, is I asked my friend Chat. I called ChatGPT Chat because I think it's quite friendly. I like to keep it personal. And I say, I need to give a closure statement on a forum about if artificial intelligence is a friend or foe. What would be the perfect answer? And obviously, they do, oh, that's a great question, my friend, right? That's a fantastic question. That's the perfect place to give a very meaningful answer. And I chose, they give me 3 options, right? I always do. I went for the balance at TOEFL. Okay, I didn't want to go for the optimistic and inspirational. That's not me. And I didn't want to go for the cautious and reflective. That's not me either. So the balance and TOEFL, you say, in the end, artificial intelligence is neither a friend or a foe. It is a reflection on us. The way that we design, regulate, and use it will determine whether it becomes a force for progress or a source of harm. The choice is not on the machine's hands, it's on ours. Okay? That was a perfect answer to me. Yeah? So, and that's one thing that I would like actually to take home, is that we keep talking about AI as a foreign entity. It's not a foreign entity. It's something that we are creating, it's something that we are developing. We're still on time to make it the right way. And that's one thing that will be difficult. We know this is not easy, this is an eternal question. But I hope that we can actually do that for future generations, because this will be extremely important. That's it. And last but not least, I would like to thank everybody for coming today. And thank you very much for making the time. And thank you so much for the Strap people who make this possible. You guys are stars. This is the 11th forum already. Oh my goodness, 11th. Yeah, I feel like a grandfather now. But yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you so much for your time, and hopefully see you next year. Thank you all. Sorry, before everybody disappears, we're going to take a picture here for everybody. Yeah?